I never imagined that the quiet elegance of our London townhouse, the same place where I had raised my son with love, discipline, and endless sacrifices, would become the stage for the most horrifying truth of my life. But that evening, just 3 weeks before my son Daniel's wedding, I returned home earlier than expected from visiting my sister in Manchester, feeling unusually uneasy for reasons I couldn't explain. And as I unlocked the front door, the house felt wrong, too silent, too tense, like it was holding its breath. And when I walked past the staircase toward the study, I heard unfamiliar laughter, soft but unmistakably intimate, coming from upstairs, and my heart began to pound as I recognized the voices, one belonging to my husband Richard, the man I had been married to for over 25 years, and the other belonging to Olivia, my son's fiancée, the young woman we had welcomed into our family with open arms, trust, and pride. And for a moment I stood frozen in the hallway, my hands trembling, my mind refusing to accept what my ears were hearing. But when I climbed the stairs quietly and saw them through the half-open bedroom door, standing far too close, speaking in whispers that carried familiarity instead of respect, something inside me shattered, and before I could step forward or scream or demand answers, my phone buzzed violently in my hand, and it was Daniel, calling me repeatedly, and I answered in a daze, whispering his name, and that was when he said the words that stopped my heart even more than what I had just seen. "Mom, don't confront them, please." And when I demanded to know how he knew, he replied in a trembling whisper, "Because I already knew, and it's worse than you think." And those words echoed in my head as I slowly backed away, my legs barely supporting me. Because nothing could have prepared me for what my son revealed that night when we met secretly at a cafe near the Thames, far from our home, where he confessed that Olivia hadn't just been involved with Richard recently, but had been manipulated into a twisted arrangement that had started over a year ago, long before the engagement, long before the wedding plans, when Richard had offered her financial help, emotional guidance, and career connections while she was vulnerable and struggling. And Daniel had discovered fragments of this betrayal months earlier, but had been quietly investigating, gathering evidence, emails, recordings, bank transfers, and messages that painted a picture far darker than simple infidelity, because Richard hadn't just betrayed me or crossed moral lines. He had systematically controlled and silenced Olivia, using his power, money, and influence, threatening to ruin her future if she spoke out. And Daniel admitted that Olivia had come to him in tears weeks earlier, confessing everything, begging for forgiveness, revealing that Richard had been orchestrating events behind the scenes, pushing the wedding forward not to unite families but to keep her trapped, to maintain his leverage. And as I listened to my son, my anger transformed into something colder, sharper, more dangerous than rage, because I realized that the man I had shared a life with was someone I had never truly known. And that night, Daniel and I made a decision not driven by revenge, but by justice. Because confronting Richard openly would only allow him to manipulate the narrative, deny everything, and destroy Olivia's credibility. So instead, we played along, smiling at family dinners, finalizing wedding arrangements, acting as if everything was perfect, while behind the scenes, Daniel continued collecting evidence, and I contacted a solicitor discreetly, uncovering financial irregularities, hidden accounts, and past complaints that had been quietly settled with non-disclosure agreements, revealing a pattern of behavior that had gone unchecked for years. And the closer the wedding day came, the more confident Richard became, unaware that the walls were closing in around him. And on the morning of the wedding, held in a historic Surrey estate with guests arriving from across the UK, Richard walked proudly beside me, completely oblivious to the fact that every step he took was leading him toward exposure, because when the ceremony reached the moment where the officiant asked if anyone objected, it wasn't a dramatic interruption or public humiliation that followed, but something far more devastating, as Daniel calmly stepped forward, thanked the guests for coming, and announced that the wedding would not proceed, not because of a change of heart, but because the truth deserved to be heard. And then, in a controlled, composed voice, he revealed evidence that left the room in stunned silence. As recordings played, documents were distributed, and the carefully constructed image of my husband collapsed in real time, with guests whispering, relatives crying, and Richard's face draining of color as he realized. There was no escaping what he had done, and when authorities arrived, called not in chaos but in preparation, Richard was escorted away without a scene, stripped of dignity by his own actions, and as for Olivia, she publicly acknowledged her mistakes, took responsibility, and later cooperated fully with investigators, choosing accountability over silence. And in the months that followed, our lives changed irrevocably. The marriage I thought was unbreakable ended. The home I cherished was sold. And I rebuilt myself piece by piece, stronger than before, watching my son heal and grow into a man defined not by betrayal but by integrity. And although the pain of that day still lingers, it taught me a truth I now live by, that silence protects abusers, truth dismantles them, and sometimes the most shocking betrayals are not the end of your story, but the beginning of your freedom. A lesson I share now not for sympathy, but as a warning, because monsters do not always look like monsters. Sometimes they sit beside you at the dinner table, smiling, waiting for the moment you stop paying attention.